It's 8:07 on WMAL. This is where Washington comes to talk. You are listening to Mornings on the Mall with Brian and Larry. Let's talk a little ISIS. This was last night's debate. Senator Bernie Sanders.
Very little of that budget, less than 10%, actually goes into fighting ISIS and international terrorism. We need to be thinking hard about making fundamental changes in the priorities of the Defense Department.
Shockingly, Senator Bernie Sanders' solution to fight our terrorist enemies is spending more money. What solution does Bernie Sanders not have there that doesn't involve spending more money?
Every solution.
Well, maybe that is a problem that needs solving with more money. Let's ask our next guest, Erick Stakelbeck. He is the terrorism analyst and host of CBN's The Watchmen Show, and he's got a brand new book. It's called ISIS Exposed: Beheading Slavery and the Hellish Reality of Radical Islam. Okay, ISIS, ISIL. By the way, can you break that down for me here, Erick Stakelbeck? Why does the administration and some politicians insist on referring to them as ISIL versus ISIS? What's the distinction?
Gentlemen, good morning. That's the first thing my wife told me to do when I agreed to write the book. Hey, what is she said? Explain the difference between ISIS and ISIL. Basically, ISIS stands for the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, that area where ISIS has declared a caliphate right now. ISIL, which President Obama and his administration officials for some reason insist on using, stands for the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant. Now, long story short, when you give them the Levant, you give them the entire region. You give them everything from Jordan to Saudi Arabia to Egypt to Israel. Why the president does that, I'm not sure, because to me, that gives ISIS more credibility. You're giving them more geographical ground when you call them ISIL. Doesn't make a lot of sense.
And what do they call themselves?
The Islamic State. Simply the Islamic State, Larry. They've declared this caliphate. In the beginning, they called themselves ISIS, but now they believe this thing is global. They've declared this caliphate spreading across 36,000 square miles of territory in the very heart of the Middle East, and they are just the Islamic State in their view.
We think about ISIS as being something that's over there, but I mean, even in the last few days here in our region, we've had an incident where a couple of people were trying to go and join ISIS, and they've been arrested by the FBI. Two Woodbridge men. Right here in Woodbridge, we have people who wanted to go join ISIS. They seem to have a very effective way of interesting people and getting them to come to their cause.
Yeah, Brian, this is a sign of the times. I'll give you some chilling numbers here. The FBI director, James Comey, said recently that we have at least 900 cases active into ISIS-related activity right here on American soil, spread across all 50 states. So what the FBI director, a leading Obama administration official, is saying is that we have a network of ISIS supporters and sympathizers in every state of the union. So the barbarians are not just at the gates, they're inside the gates. And as you mentioned, Brian, we had these two Woodbridge men recently over the weekend arrested for trying to travel over there and join ISIS. Again, U.S. officials say at least 250 U.S. citizens have done the same thing, have either traveled or tried to travel to Iraq and Syria to join ISIS. And the fear is that these recruits are going to return. They're going to start trickling back here to the United States. We saw that in Paris back in November. Some of the returnees, French citizens who had fought with ISIS in Syria, returned and helped carry out that horrific attack in Paris.
Well, one imagines if there's 900 cases that the officials are trying to monitor, that they can't possibly monitor all of them the way they should be monitored.
Brian, that's exactly it. And James Comey, the FBI director, has said that, look, we are getting spread thin. This is becoming... Basically, this is my words, this is becoming an epidemic. I don't say that lightly. When you have 900 cases in all 50 states, it seems every other day, it seems we have a new arrest, someone who is trying to go to Syria, someone who is plotting a terror attack here on U.S. soil. Now, many times, these are folks who have no direct connection to ISIS and who haven't even trained overseas, but they're radicalized online. And that's really what sets ISIS apart from any global terrorist movement, any jihadist movement we've seen, is their savvy online, gentlemen. Look, from Facebook to Twitter to Instagram to YouTube to spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on slickly produced propaganda videos. And again, ISIS, their communications, their propaganda departments are filled with Westerners, people who were raised here in America, in Western Europe, who know our culture and know how to speak directly to an English-speaking audience and resonate with them.
So tell me, Erick Stakelbeck, what do you reveal? You say the name of the book is ISIS Exposed. What do you reveal in your book that we haven't been learning through the media already about this group, and what should we be doing?
Yeah, I think number one, I reveal pretty much the theme we've been discussing here, guys. Look, that the enemy is here, and it's not alarmism, it's not sensationalism. I spent 6 of the 9 chapters in the book highlighting what ISIS and its sympathizers are doing here in the West. And the reason I did that is because, yes, we know what ISIS is doing in the Middle East, but a lot of times today to shake people from their slumber here in America and in Europe, you have to tell them, look, this is in your backyard. This is a real and immediate threat that affects you directly. So that's one thing. The other thing, what we should do, guys, it almost sounds simplistic, and you played that Bernie Sanders soundbite going in, but we need to crush ISIS militarily in the Middle East, where it lives and breathes in Iraq and Syria, this caliphate they've declared. David Cameron, the British Prime Minister, recently said the same thing. We need to crush this caliphate, and if you do that, you would hopefully demoralize the global movement, put a dent in the ideology. No guarantee, but the fact that ISIS has declared a caliphate, which has been the great dream of radical Islamists for the past century, that has made it a clarion call for radicals around the world. ISIS has attracted people from over 100 countries to this so-called caliphate in the Middle East. And by the way, it doesn't take a ground invasion like we saw in Iraq previously. Think back to Afghanistan in 2001. We had special forces, the CIA on the ground, working with the Northern Alliance. They routed the Taliban.
Well,
we can do the same thing today with the Kurds.
But wait a minute. I hear the president say that that's exactly what he's trying to do.
Yeah, but the thing, he says he's trying to do it, but actions speak louder than words. And the Kurds, for instance, have been waiting and waiting for real support, real assistance, real weaponry to come in their hands as they fight ISIS. Look, the Kurds are fierce fighters. They're very pro-American, an ideal ally against ISIS. ISIS is not an 800-pound gorilla. They have some 30 to 40,000 foot soldiers right now in Iraq and Syria, but they can be crushed in swift order if we had some political will. Not only has President Obama not made that commitment, the airstrikes have been very limited. They have been too restrictive. There's been major restrictions on U.S.-led airstrikes against ISIS targets. So basically, President Obama seems to be managing this conflict until he leaves office. At least that's my view.
All right, Erick Stakelbeck, thank you so much for joining us. As you know, every day we get a new headline about ISIS. It's an important book to read. ISIS Exposed: Beheading, Slavery, and the Hellish Reality of Radical Islam. So much more to get into with you, but we're out of time, Erick. Thank you.
Good stuff, Erick.
Thank you, gentlemen. Have a good day.